you like to lead just a couple of minutes of centering like you did last time when we connected?
Beautiful. Yeah.
Let's start with that, and then we'll have a dialogue following.
So, hello, Darya. Let's begin by just lining up inside each of us. So if you want to close your eyes or just lower your gaze so that you can turn your perception inside. And I'll do the same. And we just take a moment to notice what's going on in our body. By feeling the pull of gravity, first of all. Just feel the pull of gravity on the body. Simple, down to earth. Physical presence. And noticing the ebb and flow of our breath within that gravitational pull of physical. So allowing our mind to drop into body and breath. Noticing whatever physical sensations we're experiencing. Energy, any tensions, just letting it all be there. Pleasure. Whether it's wellness or trouble, whatever we can experience in the body right now. Noticing whatever emotional feelings we have going on. Welcoming that too. So that really all is welcome. Whatever is welcome. Deep breath into all of that. Letting it go. And when you're ready, you can come out and see each other. Hi again.
Hello again.
Thank you for being.
Beautiful. And that really made a difference last time we connected, as we started with a bit of centering. And we all go through different emotional journeys. And when we meet, I noticed when you invited me to do centering, I was going through that grief and sadness as our dear friend took his life. And whatever sadness or grief that was, when I centered and connected to my part that is there always and is there present, it actually helped me to connect with you, with myself, with you.
Yeah.
And then I felt better.
Yeah.
So there's something magical about combination of that process of looking inward, even with the different thoughts that come in and out. But also as we listen to a voice, and you have a very soothing voice, how we trust and follow that voice. It's also a reflection of our own voice that is calm, that part of our voice that knows, that part of our voice and ourself that is still. And it's
Of
interesting.
the swirl of modern world,
Yes.
2022 is happening. That's right. There is a place that's still and
Yeah.
just here. That's right.
And I would like to start our dialogue with that and 01, or that stillness piece. The
Mm-hmm.
maybe just share a few words about your background and how you got into that
Sure.
voice that it can lead
Mm.
uh, to stillness, but also the body that can welcome everything, as you move. Because
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that. But before I go there, I would just like to say one more piece about that process of briefly, swiftly centering and tuning in to that still place. That even when, like last time we spoke, you just learned about the death of a friend, and I was having a troubled day too. And that in my experience, when we take even a moment to align ourselves and drop down out of the chat room mind into what's really happening, then it doesn't matter what the feelings are that we're going through. We can access a more creative, positive, beautiful experience of those feelings. Like grieving is beautiful. Some of the most beautiful works of arts that we have been created out of grief because it's a kind of loving. And I think all of our feeling that in my perception, there are no negative feelings. There's just positive and negative ways of dealing with feelings or using the energy that feelings are. And so that's been a massive part of my practice, is to find ways when I'm troubled or when I'm not, but when we're doing fine, there's not so much attention needed, is there? So when at the times when things are hard, to have a practice that I can drop into my body, my breath, and into the heart of my feelings,
oh,
where it's not so much a kind of mind game that I'm doing with myself and churning, more of a pure emotional, physical presence experience, then it doesn't matter what I'm feeling or going through. There's something creative to be found in the heart of things. So that's the
and
additional thing I wanted to just say about
actually,
that
I would
practice.
like to stay here a little bit more, Adam. If
Mm-hmm.
uh, you just brought something even more interesting, is how do we cope with grief, as many people are now experiencing this for many reasons, through disconnecting during pandemic from the beloved ones, or grieving, leaving the space that they used to live because of the economical, political, and social conflicts and violence going on, and uh, people who choose to connect and then lose somebody who they feel very connected with, and experiencing grief and sadness and disconnection is almost like a new status quo these days, together with the stress
There's
and
a lot of
anxiety.
heartbreak around, and my starting point in a way with, well, how can we like help? When we're there's a sort of heartfelt yearning to help, isn't there? When people are hurting, I think that's a very natural impulse for us. And my first thing is to acknowledge, well, grief is a kind of love. We don't grieve if we don't love. It's a form of loving, and so that there can be a kind of tenderness around it rather than seeing it as a problem. It's like it's a heart. I don't think the solution to heartbreak is less heart. I, I think it's where I think we have to find a way to tenderly be with it and to find the sweetness in it. And there actually is an incredible sweetness about grief if we can go through it. And I think when we really are, you grieve when you lose something you love or when you're losing something you love, and it doesn't do any service to that love to try to make the grief go away before going through it. It's like it asks of us to sort of pay respect in some way to that love and let the tears fall and feel whatever painfulness there is. And by going through that, it's like, what's that amazing stanza in The Prophet? You know, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. There's this amazing stanza in that about grief and love, and how grief and pain are the way that we're kind of scooped out by life so that we can be and feel and love more. And I think that's so true. And I think this is a time of trouble, but it's also a time of transformation. And that there's enormous promise in what's happening. But it's not easy.
My question that came just as you were speaking, and I have the person actually who's a member of a family of the person who died, who feels like nothing happened. So she wants to grieve, but she doesn't feel that at all. Life goes as normal, you know, in brackets. So in quotes. And how do you help, or do you help people who are kind of disconnected from their body and their emotions when something so drastic happens and so traumatic? How do you incorporate and deal in your line of work?
Well, can I just ask before I answer your question, is that your sense of what's happening with her? Is that deep down there is grief, but somehow she's dissociated?
Yeah, even she says, look, I don't know how I am.
Okay. So in some way she's numb.
And she's even seen somebody. She has been in contact with all these people who are crying and grieving, and of course it's traumatic event, but she goes, she goes to a gym, to work, she's absolutely functional. If you saw her, you wouldn't even think that something happened. But many of us live that way in order to survive and function. And children do that to continue life in order to just survive rather than thrive. But then there's I feel that maybe an illusion of everything is okay, nothing work is needed. And at some point this disconnect, goes so high, so big, it may be the opposite, right? So
and we know that these days there's an extraordinary wealth of research that's available now on how the nervous system functions, and that we do that, we numb out from what's really going on when it's just too much, when we don't have the resources. And that can be internal resources, a kind of internal resilience to allow ourselves to feel pain when something's painful, like losing a loved one. We should feel pain, that's appropriate. But if we don't have the inner resilience to feel that, and we now know, we are deeply social mammals, probably more than any other mammal. We're vulnerable for longer after we're born than any other mammal, way longer, and way more vulnerable than any other mammal on the planet. And I think we evolved in such close contact with not just one or two, but a village or a tribe. It's very recent in our evolutionary history that we're living such independent lives. Like that independence has a heavy backside to it, and a heavy cost. And the way that in modern lifestyle, so many people have to just stay functional, as you're describing. And I would say, I have witnessed 10,000 times in my work and in my own practice that I can be in that state of like a bit disconnected from myself, and I start to move. Movement is magic. you know, and you start to move, and I'm not talking like sort of going to the gym. That's, I mean, that's better than nothing. But once you start to move, and my work is about allowing the body to move in its own way. And sometimes we work in silence, and sometimes we work with music to help catalyze an atmosphere in the room, a specific atmosphere. But one way or another, setting up the space so that people can begin to explore, well, like, how does my body move if I just take off the control a little bit, let this thing go from being headquarters into just being part of my body, and allow movement to come in a way that's natural for my body. Very quickly things start to unpack, and we start to feel what's really going on. And that's super challenging for some people sometimes. You know, it's not for the faint-hearted always. And having said that, you know, when it can be incredibly fun, and you know, when you break through, or when you're just having a good day, it's such fun to move. You know, human beings are born to dance. This kind of white Western European exported all over the world culture where lots of people never dance, like, that's new too. Like, you go to any indigenous culture, everybody dances. You know, the oldest people are sort of hobbling along still, and you know, you've got kids. I'm sure your kids were the same as mine. You know, as soon as they can stand up, if there's music on with a beat, they're there sort of bobbling their little knees and getting in the groove. It's so instinctive. We love it. Human beings love to move. It just feels really good.
That's so true.
Especially with each other, you know. But we've got so kind of controlled, and we're so kind of shy of showing up like that in front of each other. But basically, you break through the ice, which is pretty quick usually, and it just feels fantastic. But if someone's in the kind of state that your friend is in, and there's something going on deep down, and then, you know, they just don't have the resilience and the resources inside and out to handle what they're actually experiencing. In my experience, that kind of movement practice very quickly becomes this extraordinary resource. Yeah. It's like, oh, there it is. Here it is. I can lean into this physical experience of my own presence, gravity, breath, feeling, moving. It's like, it reconnects us so quickly to the deep down essential experience of being human that we've had since before we were born. Like, we're immersed in physical before we're born. And movement and breath and giving our presence to the moment in that way reconnects us to that deep instinctive resilience that we do actually have to feel what we're feeling. Like, babies are born knowing absolutely how to express their feelings in a physical way, and to just be in what they're in. We just got trained out of it.
Yeah.
And
so true, so true. Our little baby girl turned 1 today.
Oh, happy birthday, Mama. Congratulations again.
Yes, thank you. 3rd time mama. And it
I
feels
can't
like,
believe that's a year already.
right? It's just time flew. And Athena, just as soon as she hears a beat, you know, she goes dancing, like, so naturally, like what you're saying. And it's so beautiful. And she gives that energy to us, and we start dancing and singing, and we're reconnected to so many dances and so many songs. I actually had to find a book with lyrics to remember some of the songs that I grew up with, so we can dance together and sing. And I think you're right. There's something about the culture where in Europe, there's dancing, like in England, Morris dance. I mean, where is it? Like,
it's a bit weird, yes.
And if you think of rituals, celebrations, like in Greece, you know, now when we reconnect with big holidays, every almost holiday has a dancing ritual here in villages. And it's so beautiful to see the young and the old and everybody holding hands and
I,
going around.
I have this stereotype of the Greeks of having not lost the art like we did.
Yeah.
And do they all dance on the tables there? Does that really happen?
not, not all, but
It
sometimes
doesn't.
they do. And it's so dramatic and expressive when
Mm,
they break the plates and
mm,
when men dance. I mean, that's for me
mm,
very special. And also speaking
mm,
to you, a man,
mm,
dancing is very interesting. In many cultures, it's like women dancing a lot,
mm,
and men
yeah.
just sit drink. And
Mm,
but when I see men dance, and especially Greeks, when they go and express themselves with the
mm,
with the arms and
yeah.
the feet, and then the movements and the rotations and
Mm,
all that is just so juicy and
mm.
natural kind of thing. And they learn all the dancing, traditional dancing at school now that to
Ah, really?
to
Wow.
Greek school, and they come back and they know the traditional dance moves from the
Mm,
very early age, so they
beautiful.
can
Wow.
participate in that cultural
Yeah.
phenomenon, which is a
Yeah.
very nurturing experience to express emotions. And I feel, I went to London 2 weeks ago, and I
Mm,
felt this heaviness, the stress and sort of disconnection, the heart
mm,
closed hearts, and nobody's moving, apart from
mm.
like,
I know.
from
Yeah.
A to B, from A to B, from work home,
Yeah.
homework. And in Greece, everybody's like together, hugging,
Mm,
smiling. Let's,
mm,
connect, let's dance, let's have. And I was like, wow, what is this difference? How can we bring more of this through the work that you do in cultures like America and UK and a lot of European countries that are still having that little sort of juices flowing in their ancestries of dancing, but they
mm.
don't dance anymore, only under drugs or
Yeah.
alcohol.
Although I think it's better than it was. Like the 90s changed a lot of things. And the people who were in their teens and 20s in the 90s, dancing is a bit more in their blood than it was for my generation. And it was relatively unusual for my generation, I think. But it is changing. But yeah, we need to dance. We all need to dance.
Yeah, yeah. So grieving through dancing, I would love to recommend her to also come to one of your workshops and maybe to our retreat in Greece as well. So experiencing that, and we're gonna co-create during that week in May.
Mm.
And now, going back into your journey. So tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about where you come from, how you got to where you are, what you've created, and how we can and we will play together and
Mm.
incorporate that together.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, well, I come from quite a creative family. My brother and my sister are both musicians, and I got writers and artists and behind me. And but I was quite kind of stuck. I had some fairly, by no fault of my parents in any conscious way, I had some quite traumatic stuff in my childhood, and I arrived in my adulthood pretty stuck and didn't really know what was going on, and I sort of stumbled through most of my 20s with not really any idea what I was here to do. And then I had a moment. I was doing a job that I wasn't really into, and I had a moment late one night. I'd been on holiday for 2 weeks. I was chatting with a friend over a glass of whiskey, and I said, "Oh God, I don't want to go back to work." And he said, "Well, don't." And I said, "I have to the mortgage." And he said, "Well, sell the house." And oh, I missed the brief step. So 2 hours before this conversation, he was visiting with a copy of a book called Maps to Ecstasy by Gabrielle Roth. And I picked up this book and I read the back cover and I saw her photo and I read a couple of pages inside and I stomped up and down my living room, sort of inspired to try some of this stuff out. 2 hours later, we're having that conversation and I was like, oh my God, I'm actually free, aren't I? I could do that. I could actually just put my house on the market, quit this job I don't like, and go in search of my soul. That was the phrase that came to mind. So I did. Like I went to bed that night and I was like, oh God, that's a really wild decision. I hadn't really committed. I went to bed that night having had this wild idea, but not committed. And I lay down, and as soon as I lay down, I could hear my heartbeat in my ear. I never hear my heartbeat in my ear. Does that happen to you? It doesn't happen to me.
Not a, not no, not like that.
No, well, that happened. It never happened to me either, before or since. I don't think it did. That moment, I was like, "It's a sign." And I was 28. It's a sign. Whoa, what is it? And straight away, I got the answer. It's like, go, go, go with a heartbeat. So I was like, "Okay, I'll do it." I slept for like 3 hours. I got up. I painted a sign. Got a piece of board out the shed, painted it white, put "for sale" and my phone number on it. Landlines in those days. This was 91, and stuck it on the outside of the house. Went off to work, handed in my notice, and 4 weeks later, that was it. I got a call from someone saying, "I want your house for the asking price, and I've got cash. How soon can you move out?" And then I had my last day at work. And then the next day I heard that my therapist, who'd been absolutely like a father figure to me, had died. And so it's like I lost my house and my job and my father figure all in 3 days. And I was out, and it was like rocket fuel underneath me. And I bought a copy of Gabrielle's book in the meantime, and I bought all her music, and I was studying practicing this interesting form called the 5 rhythms dance practice at home for an hour a day, because I've been used to practicing meditation for an hour a day. I've done that for the last 10 years. So I just sort of switched to practicing movement for an hour a day. And you know, lots of stuff happened in the following few months. But there came a moment, maybe 5 months after that decision I'd made, where I just knew this is what I'm doing with my life. I was at a workshop, and 5 rhythms workshop, and I just knew in my bones, this is what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to teach movement. This is going to be it. I just knew it. And then I looked back and I was like, oh my God, that night when I picked up Gabrielle's book and made that life-changing decision, that was like 2 hours after picking up her book. I didn't realize at the time. I didn't make the connection that I'm going to go and search for my soul because I've just found Gabrielle Roth. But I think something inside me just knew. It's like, found her. Let's go. That's it. And it really was. I had a very deep connection with Gabrielle. It was a teacher with a capital T relationship with her, and a deep soul level mystery school kind of apprenticeship that I had with her for a couple of decades. Wow. And I trained with her to teach, and then I had some individual mentoring to work with emotional stuff with her, and because she recognized that was particularly kind of my thing, because I was so troubled.
Oh, well, you're also now
yeah.
you
so I practiced that I was steeped in the 5 rhythms world for a long time. I taught it for 25 years, and then I had another kind of turn, like that first one. I was hitting a bit of a glass ceiling in the 5 rhythms world, but I was really reluctant to admit it to myself because I'd made such a deep commitment to it when I first found it. And I was like, this is it. But I was hitting a bit of a glass ceiling, and I was in a workshop with a friend. He was teaching, I was participating, and he said, okay, imagine you're in a 1 meter square box and you're trapped. I was like, yeah, do the dance of being trapped. I was like totally into it, and then he was like, okay, now break out, everybody, and I just went, exploded in the room. It was the most energetic dance I'd done for years, and afterwards I was like, wow, that was a lot of energy, Adam. What just happened? I was like, I didn't know what had happened. 24 hours later, on my way home from Lyon, the workshop was in Lyon, in France. 24 hours later, I'm on my way home, and I stepped off a train, changing trains in Paris. I stepped off a train, and as I stepped out of the door, I noticed in my heart, like, oh my God, I've left. What I broke out of was the 5 rhythms. I was like, oh, wow. Help. Then it was like, now you've got to do a whole lot of other stuff, Adam. That's all very well to just leave something, but what are you going to do now that you're out? But I did know what was coming, but I had just been unwilling to see it. But that's the kind of thing that I have witnessed in countless people over the years and seen them. I mean, those are two dramatic examples of a bit of movement experience and then a big decision. But it's I've noticed that when I really drop into my body and allow my body to do what it needs to do, I don't even need to know what's happening, but something's happening. And it might fall into place a day later or even a year later. But things, yes, I think a lot of stuff happens in us underground. We're vast, we're like a forest where a lot of the stuff happening is in that mycelial network amongst the roots of the trees, and you don't see it, but there's a lot of action going on there. And I think we're just the same. And when you allow the body to happen, things happen, things change. And in my experience, it's always for the best. It's like magic. Like I said, movement is magic, and it's always for the best, even if it seems cataclysmic at the time. I was very well established 5 rhythms teacher. That was in many ways not a very wise business move, because I was very well respected. One of the most experienced teachers on the planet. In that, there's a big network of 5 rhythms teachers, and I left to be a one-man band and create my own thing based on an obscure mathematical equation, which I'd had this deep insight into the real nature of zero and how the 4 most fundamental numbers in the universe fit together like an amazing pattern and equal zero. That's another story. I made a film about it. Maybe you can put a link in the show notes to this so people can check it out if they want. But what was I saying? Yeah, so even when it seems like something comes out of an embodied experience that is challenging or even painful or difficult, even then, in my experience, it always works out somehow. It's like the body knows. There's an incredible wisdom in the body if we can only tap into it. And movement and presence, breath is a really fast way to do it. And I know you're doing the same thing in your work, but just coming at it from another angle. With your constellations work, because I've experienced it a little bit, both with you and other people. And then it's the same thing. You're listening to what's happening in the moment, like inside, and trusting what comes, right? And it's not just movement that's magic. We're magic. Human beings are magic.
Yeah, so powerful. Wow. And sometimes people have this almost a thought belief. Some people are good at dance and some people are not good at dancing, and there's almost this maybe a painful kind of cultural stigma about dancing and movement, especially people who are trained to use their brain so well.
Yeah,
they become very successful with brainy kind of jobs. And the muscle is so developed there that it becomes almost a barrier to loosen it up, to let the body move. Many of them shy away from even gatherings that allow dance, or when they start dancing, it's very mental. Seeing myself dance or seeing myself move, am I doing criticizing unconsciously, not allowing to be, to relax, to connect. What do you recommend and how do you deal with this kind of things for people who are kind of on the edge? They're curious, but they're saying, oh, maybe it's not for me.
Yeah. Okay. Good question. Thank you. And in terms of our retreat, I would say, well, I although we've been talking about the word dance, often when people who are not steeped in that kind of practice hear the word dance, they'll think nightclub or performance. And I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about a movement practice where sometimes we might use music, and sometimes when we're really having a good time together, we might suddenly feel like, wow, we're actually dancing. But a lot of the time, I'll ease people into the experience by just having people walk in the space. And when you're very used to just being in your head and treating the body like my friend Mark Walsh says, treating it like a brain taxi, then even just walking without having a destination, just doing a walking meditation in the space with a bunch of other people, where you tune in to the physical experience, like what's that actually like? Can you feel it when your foot hits the floor? Can you feel the shift in weight from side to side as you walk? And even just that, it's a deep shift of attention and a deep shift in your state of consciousness to become embodied as we walk. And then you're in. And that's it. That's all we're talking about, really. And yes, we might get more expressive, but yes, a lot of people have been shamed as kids or teenagers about their body and about how they might look when they're dancing. And the kind of movement practice that I'll be bringing to enrich it's nothing to do with how you look. It's absolutely not about that. It's about presence and really dropping into what your true physical presence is. And we can all feel it when someone is rooted and happening in their body. It's a very different experience being with that kind of human being, or being with a human being in that kind of state, I should say, rather than someone who's in brain taxi mode.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to be with someone who's embodied, because when we're embodied, we're a whole person. Like, we're not just a walking head, talking head. We are deeply sensory, physical, sensitive animals. And we're instinctively tuned into body language with each other, much more than a lot of people realize.
Yes.
And my work is also about like learning to not read body language so that then you can manipulate yourself or other people into getting the outcome that you want out of a dialogue. But tuning into what's actually happening and being willing to feel the truth and meet another human being with a degree of kind of humbled gladness to actually make a connection with someone on a human heart-to-heart level, which is so much more relaxed and real than many of the interactions that we habitually engage in, especially in the world of work, where we're often sort of function oriented. But to learn how deep breath from you there. Yeah, exactly. We're all, so it's hard not to be so driven in our work world, isn't it? And I constantly have to remind myself, sitting at the laptop and having meetings. I mean, thank God for Zoom, where we can see each other. It's a lot better than phone calls, so that we can have some sense, because we're very, very good at picking up on each other's nonverbal cues. And even if it's just the face, whole body's better. In the room is even better still. And in the room, when there's a willingness between us and an agreement between us to just let the kind of stiffness drop a bit, when there's a willingness to experiment a bit with what it feels like to be physical and what it's like to actually notice each other's body language. And I think something much deeper can happen. Yes. And something much more fruitful, actually.
Yes, I found it's very interesting how, as you mentioned, most of the time we are functioning during, people who work in the offices or having jobs in organizations, mainly through the brain, through the hand. If it's a manual job, it's hands, but it's almost like, well, very, very few jobs that involve movement. In a sense that actually is very natural and evolutionary for us. We're always moving. And now we are in a way stuck, and now for this pandemic even more stuck inside little boxes. And that movement of expansion or connection, connecting to our body. so needed. It's almost like we are programmed to forget the dance or forget the
Mhm.
movement, forget the rituals because of the survival stress
Mhm.
or economical construct that
Yeah.
we've put ourselves into the, the cities. But I just wonder how you see us co-creating and working together
Mm,
and doing the systemic work
mm,
and what you are bringing from your perspective,
mm,
how we can enrich also each other's work
mm,
and what you see our touching points and what you are as themes are going to bring
mm,
to the week and to the people, and I also share my perspective on how we
mm,
could do that and
mm,
having that dialogue, especially for those who are listening and watching and they are coming or they're curious,
mm,
or just to see how we do this kind of
mm,
things together.
mm. Well, I would say that movement work, the kind of movement work that I'm advocating and bringing to the table is it's it it's like a kind of magic potion that just works for whatever is needed. So like I'm imagining that early on in the retreat, we'll have some time to be moving together in that, whether it's just that walking meditation or something a little more advanced and deeper, we'll have some time to break the ice in that way. And it's super helpful as a way to begin. And then the kind of work that you're bringing with the constellations um, investigations that you do, I think that brings up and opens up so many deep, powerful themes in people's lives that then the movement work is really helpful to integrate what
Mm,
comes out of those kind of sessions that you lead.
yeah.
And people have had deep insights about themselves, and maybe they've had strong feelings come up, and they've started to know each other. Like in your work, people are going to be seeing things about each other, learning things about each other that are pretty profound, I would imagine. And then to entering into movement work together just helps all that to kind of settle into place and integrate and land.
Mm,
So that would be the obvious kind of dovetailing for me. It's like movement work allows things to open up and be ready
mm,
for the kind of investigation you're doing. And it also helps things to integrate and land and kind of be felt in the body and kind of, oh yeah, here it is. Now I get it. The stuff that I was seeing and learning and insights that I was having, I can feel it in my body now. And the movement helps it to sort of be here. Know what I mean? Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah, I know
Mm,
exactly what you mean because I've seen you work and you've seen my work and we've worked together, but
mm,
it's been a pandemic work as
mm.
well, right? So online through Zoom, which was very powerful for people who
Yeah,
attended.
yeah,
We did the initiation, the body movement that you did, and then we did the systemic repatterning and the systemic enrichment piece, and then integration, with the sort of the movement thing. And it's very interesting what I noticed, and there's basically only two major directions, and there it's kind of an extreme direction. So people experience a spectrum of excitement, or it can go into like the stress and anxiety, right?
mm,
So if they're not if they're not careful, this is a nervous system that is an alert. This is sympathetic nervous system, so they need tools and processes and body movements to relax and feel
mm.
calmer
Yeah,
and clear that stress out of their body system,
mm,
especially when big boulders get discovered under the ground,
yes,
for their tree to sort of to breathe with a
yeah,
bit of air.
yeah,
And that's the trajectory that I see a lot of people need help with. And then the other, it's almost the opposite, is when there's a parasympathetic nervous system activated. So they may look okay and together in terms of calmness and
mm,
relaxation, but they're suffering from the lacking energy
mm,
and lacking motivation and interest and self sort of inspiration, and they're moving towards this depressive sort of
yeah,
angle.
yeah,
And both, if they're not careful, if not aware, if not conscious, going negative, and
mm,
they need help to have that zest, have that energy pumped up, have that clearing almost like from the bottom up to feel more,
Yeah.
power, to feel more energy, to go just to have a meaningful life.
Yes.
So I'm giving this to you as, a quest, how we're gonna, combine as we're having the week. The first day is going to be around exploration, and it's about exploring who we are, why we are there, what we're going to do, and learning something new, like new modalities. We're
Mhm.
having some incredible
Mhm.
pieces of work. Then the second day we're moving into nourishment,
Mhm.
enrich. So E for explore, and for nourish.
Mhm.
Nourishment from the inside out as well as outside in. Some people will have also some treatments with the practitioners who are coming, and the juiciness and the validation, the showering of the inner child with the appreciations, with all the good food that we're going to eat, four amazing restaurants of that resort, and people, the chefs gonna create special cuisine for us,
Wow.
and the
Mhm.
air of the beach and the sunshine
Mhm.
creek, and the movement as we're going to go and integrate some of the processes, the nourish day. And then the third one is respond, R for respond versus react. Very important third
Mhm.
pillar of enrich system, where we will learn how to cope with stress in
Mhm.
different ways. This is my method called stasis kinesis,
Yeah.
and we're going to play together with this triads, mama, papa, child,
Mhm.
how we work, how we learn to cope with stress, and how we can go from stress to flow,
Mhm.
how to respond versus react. And then fourth days, I imagine versus willpower, is the power of imagination and creating endorphin sort of state of the body,
Mhm.
and having those movements maybe with some creativity. So this is
Mhm.
an interesting challenge for you, how we can maybe bring in the rhythms or the archetypes, the animals, the imagination, the future scenarios in our body, to bring that. So the hormones also, there's a biological aspect of exploration is dopamine, nourishment, serotonin. Respond is about a soothing cortisol level. Imagine is about endorphins. Then the fifth day is a C for communicate, and it's about estrogen, is learning the tools to communicate with myself, with others. How do I do that? Positive, negative, together, solo. Am I in relationship with somebody? Do I want to be in relationship with somebody? All that work that you can already, I can see your bulbs go like tick, tick, tick.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So the communication is a very important day. The way how we use linguistics and neurology, the way how we reprogram and we enrich our system. And then the final sixth day before the finale is the hugs and humor. We use all the power of oxytocin when we hug and when we laugh, the more endorphins, more sort of this high vibrations, raising the energy and connecting through the roots, and going into the integration piece in the seventh day is ascension.
Beautiful. Wow. What a week. I can't wait. I'm so excited to be part of it.
Oh yes, we are so excited, and Alex and I are joining forces. Alex is my partner, and we have a team of 10 amazing masters like yourself,
Mm.
who are gathering in that space to hold for the planet, because we also have a process that I would love to integrate into the health of the planet. We have somebody who's coming from the World Health Organization, the WHO, and she's a Ukrainian.
Mm.
So it's a very interesting process that we're going to do. We
Mm.
have a Russian coming,
Mhm.
Ukrainian, we have Americans, we have all the Germans and the power of the British. So we have also planetary level constellation in the making,
Mm.
that hopefully can help us all feel a little bit better in terms of sending the right vibes and helping shift to the love rich and balance free.
Yeah.
Um,
May it be so.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
I just want to thank you, Adam. If you would love to share final words about your feelings, your thoughts, any questions from you to me, and it's a lovely.
Well, I'm aware that both you and I work very creatively and have a love of kind of surfing the moment. And I loved working with you and when we did, and I very much look forward to doing more of that kind of surfing and with Alex as well and the whole team. And I'm thrilled to be part of a sort of collaborative creation here that will also involve all the participants and sort of the whole team. Yes, there's us steering and holding the space, but everybody gets to contribute and be part of that co-creation. And what a time this is to be involved in such a finely honed journey as what you've just described. And I'm thrilled to be part of it. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you. It's been my pleasure to get to know you, to meet
Mm.
you, to actually experience your craft. You're a master of your field. And when I first went to your workshop in Cambridge, and now we live in Cambridge, actually, it's a very interesting coincidence. We have moved our UK base into Cambridge, and now we're in Greece physically, but that link is there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that process that you led us and your movie, and I would love to share. Everybody, please watch the link that we're going to share in the description of the video here. It's a really interesting, deep reminder for all of us to stay connected to our truth, search truth, search the path of who we are, why we're here, and connect on a deeper level through our body. And that's why we're joining forces with Adam Barley. So really excited.
Right. Okay. Bless you, Darya. Thank you so much. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Look forward. Okay.